Artlist.io.
Hello, and welcome to Rainbow Dreamcatcher,
The Love Podcast.
My name is Nilla, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and relationship coach. I travel the world helping individuals to learn the skills they need to have happy and healthy relationships.
And I'm Big Sexy, her loving husband and co-host, here to provide brevity. Awesome sauce. And what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about a topic that comes up in so many of the relationships that I sit with.
Okay.
It's so strange because it's such a huge deal, and yet when people when I sit down with folks, they almost always think it's not that big of a deal, or at least one member of the partnership thinks it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's a recipe for danger.
It's a recipe for danger, and it is something that affects so many relationships. But before I tell you about this, I'm going to give you some stats.
Ooh,
right?
Let me some stats. Let the stats.
So,
hit me with the stats.
A 2019 Yelp survey showed that 80% of respondents, of people who were living with a partner, disagreed about this topic.
Oh.
And that a fifth of those disagreed frequently about this topic.
Like they would have arguments with their
have
partner about this topic?
With their partner about this topic.
Okay.
This is something that we spend a significant amount of time doing. On average, people spend about 690 hours per year engaged in this topic.
Ooh.
Right? And our favorite little Pew Research folks did another survey of heterosexual partnerships in 2015. And according to them, 56% of partners ranked this particular area as very important for relationship. This was true whether they had children or did not have children, right?
Okay.
The only two things that were more important were having shared interests and satisfying sex.
Oh, boy, that takes the third one. That takes one of the guesses off the table.
That's right. Now, let me tell you some of the things it ranked higher than.
Okay.
Right? It ranked higher than shared religious beliefs.
Oh, wow.
It ranked higher than having children, the decision to have children. And it ranked higher than having agreement on politics.
So higher than politics, religion,
and children. Right?
Wow.
We're talking about housework.
Wait.
We're talking about housework.
Wait. You're talking about sweeping and mopping and cleaning and doing the dishes.
Mopping the floor.
And stuff like that ranks higher than having children?
Ranks higher in terms of what partners feel are most important to a satisfying relationship.
Yeah, I guess if you don't have kids.
No, this is irrespective of whether you have kids or don't have kids.
No, what I'm saying is if people, whether they have kids or don't have kids, the decision to have children isn't happening every day.
It isn't happening every day.
But them dishes pile up every single day.
I don't know how it happens, but every time I clean the kitchen, it's dirty again. It drives me crazy.
It's because we eat.
It's because we eat, right? So today we're going to talk a lot about housework and what it means to relationship. It's something that I see in my practice and in my coaching so much that this is an area that people argue about constantly, right?
Wow.
Part of it is because there's so much to argue about.
Right.
People argue about when to do it. That's 53% of the arguments, according to our Yelp survey. They argue about how to do it.
Right.
Like, okay, we're doing this now. Why are you stacking the dishes this way? Or this is not how you load the dishwasher.
Yes.
Right. And then they argue 48% of the time about who should do it. Wow. Right? Like how should the task actually be
divvied up amongst the couple?
Right? So part of it, you're right, is that it is incredibly difficult to navigate a task that has to happen daily.
Mm-hmm.
There are a huge number of domains across which it happens, right? And there are just things that we naturally like to do and don't like to do.
Right.
Some of us like to be neat and tidy. Some of us don't like to be neat and tidy. Some of us, there are certain things I just absolutely hate to do. I just don't ever want to do it.
Right.
And there's some things I don't mind. Right. So It comes up
Is there
a
anybody who
lot.
loves to do it? Like
I'm sure
somebody
there are.
There has to be people out there who love to wash dishes, or they get excited about laundry day.
Let me ask: is there any task or chore that you love to do that you just, man, you know what? If I can do this feels like a good day. I got it done.
Not a one.
Not a single one.
I can't think of a single household chore that fills me with pleasure at the idea of having to do it.
Yeah.
Now, I am the type of person who, when I have to do something, I begin to fixate on it and like go all in, and I'll start, like if I clean one spot, that'll lead me to cleaning a bunch of spots. But I can't say that I enjoy it.
Look forward to anything. Okay. All right. Got it.
You?
Do I look forward to things? Well, it depends, right? Because there are actually two parts to household chores. And when we think about household chores, we typically think about the physical labor itself, right?
Right.
But there's actually two parts to all household chores. There's the physical labor, and then there's the mental labor, right? Okay. So when we're talking about household chores, I probably should have said this before you answered that question.
All right.
We're talking about, of course, cleaning,
right,
cooking, home maintenance,
okay,
managing finances, planning and scheduling activities for the family, shopping, like grocery shopping and other things that we need to do, transportation. So some of those are physical.
Okay.
Some of those are mental.
Right.
Right. Does your answer change?
Yes.
Given? Okay. So what?
Yes.
How does your answer change?
So what changes? I do look forward to shopping.
Okay.
I do. I don't know. I like going to the store and walking through the aisles and finding things we need to buy to purchase food and things like that. I actually really do enjoy that.
Okay. All right.
And there was another one you mentioned. Oh, I also enjoy cooking.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. All right.
I don't. Here's the thing about cooking. I enjoy the cooking. I hate the cleanup.
Well, that's the
so usually that prevents me from
cooking.
Wanting to cook.
Oh, you hate cleaning so much
because
that
I don't want to clean up after. Because if I cook, I'm gonna get in there and I got to do it. But I don't like cleaning. It's like, well, it'd be easier if I just throw something in the microwave.
Well, I will have to keep that in mind. That is what keeps you from cooking. Now that I know, good to know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think for me, I enjoy cooking.
Right.
I don't mind the cleanup after. It's not my favorite thing, but I really enjoy cooking. I'm not a fan of the shopping part of it. I don't mind.
Really?
Yeah, I don't like to go to the grocery store so much. It's just not my thing.
Okay.
I don't
That's
mind.
Why you send me all the time.
That's why I send you all the time. I don't mind shopping for household items. Like, actually, really enjoy shopping for things for the house.
Because you have a great aesthetic when it comes to decorating the house, and so nice. So it's. And you have a particular aesthetic.
I do. I have a very specific. Y'all can guess what that might be.
I have a different aesthetic.
You mean yours goes more to like Raiders and Star Wars?
Mine goes to nerd property, black and purple.
Okay, fair.
Right. That's where I live, but I love your aesthetic.
Thank you.
So shopping for the house and stuff like that, I am happy.
Okay.
To say, yo, baby, do what you do.
Right.
Go do your magic, because some of the things you find I would never have thought to get for myself.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So I mean that's what we're talking today, and like I don't know, I guess we kind of just ran through some of the.
Well, you haven't said. Oh, you did say. You said what kind of things you love.
I enjoy cooking.
And cleaning,
right?
And buying stuff for the house, right?
Yeah, and I don't mind some forms of cleaning. Like I don't mind laundry. Laundry is fine for me. I don't hate it. I don't know that I love it, but I don't hate it. Anyway,
there's a difference between loving something,
yes,
and just not hating it.
Yes,
right. I don't hate laundry. I don't hate the dishes. I don't hate cleaning. There isn't anything around the house that I absolutely don't want to do.
Right.
There are things I wish we didn't have to do.
Yeah, and I think the topic came up because it comes up so frequently for folks that I sit with in partnership all the time. It's something that no matter who you are, you have to learn how to navigate. It's also one of those topics that comes up as very, very gendered, and then also not gendered, right? So everyone is challenged by housework, but people are often challenged differently, right? And in terms of gender, I would tell you that for the most part, at least according to the studies I saw, women feel like the allocation of chores tends to be unfair.
Yeah, I can see
Meaning that
that.
they tend to take on the bulk of the kinds of household chores that need to be done.
Right. And do you think that's due to? I'm assuming it's due to society standards and like the patriarchy.
Yeah, it's due to a few things, right? There are those gendered stereotype roles,
Right.
right? There is, let's see, I wrote some of these down. There's the gendered stereotype roles. There is beliefs about the kinds of tasks that are gendered in some ways.
Okay.
There are some beliefs about how tasks are divided up. For example, people have a tendency to say, you do this thing and I'll do that thing. And what we actually find is that couples or partners that are more satisfied actually jointly share the majority of tasks as opposed to splitting the tasks.
Okay.
Men feel, at least according to the research, feel less satisfied about how housework is done, right? So either they don't feel like it's done in an appropriate way, or they feel like they don't do it in an appropriate way and are nagged about
the way it's supposed to be
the
done.
way it is supposed to be done, right?
Okay.
So the idea that I can't just do the housework. But the question I wanted to chat with you about, right, is, or not, that wasn't your question though. The question was, what makes it difficult? I wrote some things down about this. Pardon me, listeners. I'm just going to take a moment to gander at my notes.
Yes. And
here we go. So traditional gender roles, which you talked about. Beliefs about equality, which is what we talked about how they are evenly divided. Often social policies, right? So if you don't have childcare, maternal and paternal leave, these other policies that it can be very difficult for folks to actually have the time to divide into housework. That makes it stressful.
Right.
And then a big one I've heard about recently, not recently, I mean, I've heard about it, but one that's come up kind of in TikTok land is weaponized incompetence.
Ooh.
And weaponized incompetence.
Oh, I get that. Yep.
Yeah, I want to hear your take on it. What's your thought about weaponized incompetence?
Like I've heard several comedians talk about this. Whatever is, let's say you hate doing the dishes, absolutely hate doing the dishes, and so you purposely fuck up the way you do the dishes in order to have your spouse go, oh, fine, I'll do it myself.
Right.
Knowing damn well you know how to do the dishes, but you purposely fuck it up.
Right. So
that your spouse figures it's just easier to take it over.
Yeah. So you were talking about weaponized incompetence. Let me ask you this question.
Okay.
Be honest with me.
All right.
I think there was a period of time in our early relationship.
Okay.
Where you utilized weaponized incompetence for cooking.
No.
No?
No.
No, you really couldn't cook?
No. I could cook. But again, I didn't like the cleaning.
Oh.
Right? Again, I love cooking. I've always loved cooking. I've always, whatever, like to cook. Yeah. Problem is I did not like the cleaning involved. And the problem is I would go into the kitchen, right? But in order to cook, I need to have a complete clean place.
Kitchen, right?
And if there's anything there, that means I got to clean the kitchen first.
Yes, that's right.
Then I got to cook. And then I want to clean after.
Yes, exactly right.
Right. And those two things sound like a lot to me.
They are a lot.
The before and after. So it prevented me from wanting to do the part that I loved in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I can accept that. I mean, I honestly thought that maybe it was a little bit of like, is he really just... Number one, I'm glad we got past that period. I think the way that we handle our housework now tends to work. I think there are things that I very clearly don't like to do. Like, I really hate taking out the garbage.
Right.
I just do. It's just a thing. I can do it. It's certainly not something outside of my realm. I just hate doing it.
Right. It's really funny. And I don't think I've ever told you this. When we first got together, but even before when we're talking about getting together and that kind of whole thing, and I was trying to imagine what the relationship like be with you.
Yeah.
You were such a fiercely independent woman, strong and independent, that I thought you were fine with all that shit.
All the housework?
Not that you wanted to do it,
no,
but that you were fine in doing it. I'm like, okay, cool. This will really be a partnership because I don't think there's any part of the housework that she doesn't mind doing because she's so independent. She's absolutely fine being by herself and doing it all on her own.
Yeah, fair.
And so when it came time when we started living together and whatever, and the frequent requests for me to do the things you didn't like to do,
right?
There was a part of me going, why the fuck she keep asking me to do that? Why don't she ever take it? Oh, well, maybe she's okay with that. At first, my knee-jerk reaction was, I think, is she leaning into gender stereotypes? Do I have to take out the trash because I'm a man?
No.
And then as we grew together and got to know each other, I said, no. It's not because I'm a man. It's because she hates to do that.
I hate to do it.
And then I was fine. And then I was like, okay with it,
Yeah.
I was concerned that my initial assumption and images of you were that you didn't adhere to gender stereotypes.
I don't.
Right. But you were asking me to do things
that felt gendered
stereotyped because, again, I was raised in that kind of environment.
Sure.
Right. And so you were leaning into having me do things that I was raised to do because I was a man. Right. And I thought you were asking me to do it because I'm a man, not because you didn't like to do it.
I just really didn't like to do it.
Right.
Like for real, didn't like to do it.
Right.
How is this the first time we're having this conversation?
I don't think we ever really addressed.
Oh, we definitely addressed housework.
Well, no. Not that we didn't address housework.
Yeah.
But we didn't ever address our thoughts on the other person's love or don't love of housework.
Yeah.
Right. And such specific terms.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Right.
We did read about housework and we talked about things you prefer I do and prefer you do.
Yeah.
Then we found a compromise in there.
We found our way eventually.
Right.
We found our way eventually. There was a period of time, and I think actually it was just at the start of the pandemic, which I'm sure it was highlighted because of the pandemic.
Right.
Where, at least I felt like we were at total odds about housework, cleaning, dishes, who does what, how clean stuff was. Part of that being that, we're suddenly in the shared space together more frequently than we would be. And again, time would dictate a lot of how things got done.
Right.
And then suddenly we have all this time where we are in the house and things become dirty more frequently. Right.
And we tried several different methods to find some kind of organization.
But that was rough.
It was a very rough time. Plus, we were also going through other things, and so
that was very rough.
That it's funny how that kind of stuff will trickle down to what we think is house. Because when you think of housework, again, we've listed that housework is bigger than kids, religion, politics,
right?
But we all think initially that it's such a small little thing.
It's just a task we got to figure out. It's just logistics.
Who do the dishes? All right, who take out the trash? Who does the shopping? Right. But no, but even when if you're having difficulty in that area, that can trickle up.
Well, the thing about
it can trickle down.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it, right? Is that it's about housework, but you're exactly right when you say it's actually not about housework. It's about how we communicate. It's about how we share expectations. It's about how we value things and how we feel valued in relationship. Like, I don't know, you didn't do the thing I asked you to do that was important to me. So I now feel unvalued or, not respected by you or uncared for. And so it is about housework, but housework is really the expression of how these things come out. Right.
Right.
So like, let's say the idea of weaponized incompetence, right? That's actually just a passive aggressive way of communicating.
Very much so. Yeah.
As opposed to saying, I don't like to do this or I don't want to do this, right?
Right.
Well, now that's actually trickling into how I'm communicating with you. And then I'm going to respond to that passive aggressive way of communicating the way that people respond to passive aggression, which is not great.
Right. I don't recall passive aggressive ever being, positive
it's
method
rare.
to an outcome.
It's rare. So,
Right.
you know, it's you're absolutely right when it actually comes down to this thing that we do every day that is almost like the physical representation of what is happening in our relationship.
Right.
Right. So if I take your deciding I don't want to take out the trash today, if I decide that that is something that then demonstrates that I'm not important to you, then that becomes a relationship issue.
Right.
And I think that's the challenge that a lot of partners come to when it comes to housework, right? Because again, it's frustrating. This should be just a thing we figure out. Why can't we figure it out?
Right.
I think the other part of it is that we forget about the mental labor of housework. And I think this, at least in my experience, has, well, it falls along gendered lines. And I hear this often from partners who are identified as male. Not all the time, but I generally hear this from partners who are identified as male, who identify themselves as male. And it's often the idea that like, if my wife, and this is typically the structure that I see, if my wife tells me to do something, I'll just do it. Why don't you just tell me what to do? And what that does is that makes one partner the manager, which means that partner takes on all of the mental load of figuring out what the chores are, divvying them up, determining when they get done, and then communicating that. And that adds a mental load, right?
Yes.
That says, not only do I have to execute, but I also have to manage.
Right.
And it can be really difficult for folks to understand that taking on the mental load of housework, right? Which is not just, here's some dishes that got to be cleaned, right?
Right.
But like, there are a gazillion things that I'm juggling. And now I also have to go tell you to go do something that you can see with your eyes. You know, like we both looking at these dishes. You see these dishes just like I see these dishes. Right. For you, it's not an important task to get done, but for the household, it is an important task to get done. Right. So,
and then you play that that situation where like, look, well, fine, if you wanted me to do the dishes, just tell me to do it, right? The dishes. That's putting all that weight on your shoulders.
Right. And then that moves that relationship away from partnership and into parenting.
Got it.
And, nobody wants to feel like they are parenting their partner.
Yeah,
right?
No partner really wants to feel parented by their partner.
No. But, those actions and behaviors that say, well, you're in charge of this, you tell me. You're in charge of this, you tell me, really puts people in like a parenting role, right? Because I'm saying, like, in order for me to do this, I'm not going to take my own initiative. I'm going to wait for you to direct me. Right. And that has an impact on the relationship as well. That if I feel like I have to parent you, like pick up the towel off the floor, or
just so you know, we don't have an issue with towels on.
Is that like the 18th time I've said
that's
that?
like the go-to reference we've been saying.
Well, but here's a question: do we? Do we have a problem with towels on the floor?
I don't know. Do you put the towel on the floor? I don't ever do
that. I think I referenced that because it's one of those things I hear all the time.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
right. That's a thing that people do. That seems like a small thing, right? But that. What happens then is, we have this issue and people start to develop resentment.
Right.
And then it's not just that there is a towel on the floor or you didn't pick up, clean the dishes or you didn't take out the trash. Now it's that I resent that I have to keep doing this over and over and over again. Right. It feels unfair and it feels, like it feels like a lack of care for the relationship.
It's very interesting. So, you didn't come with me to see the show, but here in Romania, when you sent me to go see the theater show Love and Chaos
from Spin Cycle
Theater, right? One of their pieces was called Split.
Oh, interesting.
And it was a husband and wife, and the husband's sitting on the chair watching Star Wars, whatever, and the wife's picking up laundry, and then her good side and her aggressive side, or not good side, but her
calm side,
and aggressive side kind of come out, the almost like the yin and yang,
okay,
right? about should we leave him? Do we did? I'm getting tired of doing this. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't help around each other. I'm tired of having. I shouldn't have to tell him to do this.
Yes.
Like it really talks about everything we're mentioning.
Yes.
It's really, really good piece. I guess it's become a plug for Spin Cycle Theater and their show Love and Chaos. But
how did it end?
So there's a fifth character who comes in who plays the embodiment of divorce.
Oh, yeah.
And he is very enticing to the wife. And like, hey, but think about the freedom. But they're like, no, we have kids and this and that. And that discussion goes back and forth. The spoiler for the way it ends, the husband does a turnaround.
Okay, good.
And begin and says he'll help out a little bit more and do a little bit more to whatever. One reason why one we're talking about the kind of thing they were mentioning in that show. The other thing is I'm a creative, and what it sparked in me is we don't ever see his side of it. We only see hers.
Right.
And so I was talking to Spin Cycle Theater that I would love to write that exact same script from his point of view.
And what do you think his point? Well, you know what? I know I listen to the other side of that quite a bit.
Right.
I'm curious as to how you would envision the other side of that, because like I can tell you phrase for phrase, not violating anybody's HIPAA rights. Right? The things that I hear across time from the other side of that, right? I hear the partner that is I guess I would call them the doer, and the doer and the sitter, maybe.
Right.
I don't know. But when I talk to the doer, I hear very specific phrases. And when I talk to the sitter, I hear very specific phrases.
Right.
Right.
And I think what I would lean into, especially after this conversation, is I would lean into the very much, if they would just ask me, I would just do it. I want them to be happy. I don't want them to see unhappy, you know?
Well, and that leads to another interesting thing I've heard popping up.
Right.
Right. Which is, and again, this falls along gendered lines, but I've heard the notion that that often men are taught, particularly along the lines of patriarchy, that men are taught that there's kind of this acceptable level of unhappiness for their partner. That I see that my partner is unhappy. I see that I could do something about it, but it's not enough for me to actually go do something about it.
That sounds gross.
It sounds gross, but I tell you, I see it so frequently. It's just that, like, you know, literally that partner will say things like, I could probably help out more, but you know, I prefer to do X, Y, and Z, or I'm tired, as if their partner's not tired.
Right. And I think that's it, right? There's also that, you know, I worked all day, I did this and that, you know. The not viewing the housework as important as X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And then my spouse takes care of the less important matters of the house. I bring in the income, she manages the housework.
Sometimes it's that. Often, though, I'm now more and more often working with partners where both partners work, both partners bring in a significant amount of income that are at least in parity, right? So, and a lot of the folks, particularly the younger folks that I work with, don't want to lean into gender norms.
Right.
They specifically in other areas of their life do not lean into gender norms, and yet then we get to the household, and that's the way it becomes split. Right. And it's frustrating because, you know, the idea is that we were going to have a different kind of relationship, and now suddenly there is this space where it is very, very gendered, and gendered in a way that places the burden in what folks believe are an unfair way, right? And I don't think, I mean, I know it sounds gross. It sounds like terrible, and it is terrible. I don't think it's folks purposely behaving badly. I think what happens is that the partner who doesn't understand or doesn't value the level of housework or really understand how it interacts with the partnership, I think that they feel like they have already done enough, right? So that what I'm doing right now is sufficient, and I could do more, but it's not like I'm doing nothing.
Right. Okay.
Right? So it's not, I'm just going to
So
sit here and be like,
there are differences in balance.
there's differences in perception.
Perception. Okay.
There's differences in perception, right? That says, listen, I watch the kids from this time to this time, so that when you get home, I go to work and then I watch the kids, and then when you get home, now you watch the kids, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
Thinking that means that there is parity,
Right.
Right. So it's not that they are not doing anything. It's that, they feel like what they are doing is sufficient for them. And if it's sufficient for them and then kind of accepted by their partner, then that's okay. Right. Even if they know that their partner is unhappy, and they may not realize actually how much resentment they are actually building up in the relationship. Yeah. And until something blows up.
Right.
Right. And oftentimes, because there are those kind of social norms, folks just kind of grit their teeth and bear it.
Yeah. Till they're on a call with you. And then,
till they're sitting down with me,
and then
it's all coming out.
Light, right?
Yeah, it's all brought to light, and a lot of that resentment, we start digging through some of that resentment and where it comes from, and a lot of it seems to be these little things, but these little things are again indicators to folks in the partnership about their partnership.
Right. So, what are the methods if you find yourself in that disagreement situation and with household stuff? How do you find resolution?
Yeah, there's a couple things. The first is to recognize what not paying attention to this area does to your relationship. It increases resentment. It can increase marital distress.
Okay.
It's one of the economic factors that are a risk factor for divorce.
Ooh, right.
So the first is to really recognize that it's not an unimportant area, right? Like it is actually a super important area.
You can hear people saying, she left me because I didn't do the dishes. Like, that's not why. But,
it's not, and it kind of is.
And it kind of is. Right. And it kind of is.
The next is to actually just sit down and communicate. It's really important to have an understanding, first of all, of what you want from your partner in this area. Oftentimes, folks come into relationships with different understandings of how to live, right? I think you and I had some differences in terms of just the physical space, right? I'll put it that way. The physical space,
yes.
And what we wanted to see on an ongoing basis and what our physical environment looked like.
Right.
Right.
No Raider sheets.
I did not want any more Raider sheets. I couldn't do it, y'all. I couldn't do it. I mean, we almost didn't get into a relationship because
I had Raider sheets.
Not just sheets, but towels.
Shower curtain.
Shower curtains. I was like, oh, this feels like the home of a teenage boy.
If you know me.
But the
PlayStation and comic book collection.
The idea that like we can both look at a room and we will have different assessments of what needs to happen in that room. So that it's important to know it will take some time to communicate what it is we actually want to see in our physical environment and what needs to be done in order to do that.
Right.
It's important to, kind of continue on in that vein to know what is the priorities, right? Some things, when we look at them, it's really important to me to have this done, and other things, it's just not that important to me. Right. And to know that we may be coming at this from different levels, that some things are just going to be completely and wholly unimportant to my spouse, and that might be okay. But if it's super important to me, then we need to figure out a way to compromise, to figure out how we're going to make sure that need gets met.
There's that word.
Compromise. And that includes things like, how do we feel about cooking like home cooked meals as opposed to bringing food in? Right. That's something that will affect how we engage with our lives, how much time we're spending, how much we're cooking, how much we're cleaning. How do you feel about having an unmade bed? Is it like super important to your day that you make a bed, or having an unmade bed not important to you?
Right.
Having a perfectly manicured lawn. Does that mean one of us has to go out and mow the lawn, once a week to make sure that happens? Paying our bills on time. This is really about how we not only recognize what tasks need to happen, which is really important. Figure out what tasks need to happen. Analyze what the priority is for those tasks. Because we only have so much time in the day.
Right.
And then we also need to figure out how that looks for our partner. What's important or not important to our partner as a part of that analysis, right? Like if there's something that you just absolutely 100% hate to do, right? Is it more tolerable for your partner to do it? Can you share the load, right?
Right.
If you both absolutely detest something, can you get somebody else to do it?
Right. Right. That's when you start talking about having kids.
Well, and if you have kids, involving kids in the housework, sorry kiddos, not that you're going to get like all the shit work, but like maybe you get all the shit work that I hate taking out the trash. So I guess like Junior, you taking out the trash.
It's not 0 times. I have actually heard somebody tell their child, when the child pushes back on having to do something, parents, why do you think I had kids?
That's mean.
It's mean and terrible, but it's not. It's not 0 times that I have heard that phrase.
No, it's not 0 times, but it is important to involve kids if you have kids, to involve them in the cleaning of and management of a household. It is one of those kinds of life tasks that's really important. They used to have, I mean, not in my generation because, I'm not that old, but for you, didn't they have like home economics?
Yes.
Or something like that? Why are you laughing?
Because you had home economics.
I did not have home economics.
It must have been not a midway, but definitely in California, we definitely had home economics.
And what did you learn in home economics?
Well, we didn't all have to take it.
Oh, who had to take it?
The women, the girls.
Oh, are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
California, I'm so disappointed.
It was a requirement. Guys could take it if they want to. It was a requirement for female students to take home economics.
What?
We were required to take auto mechanics.
Lies. Yeah. Oh my gosh,
we
California. What was this, 1942?
This was Fontana, California. So, the sticks.
The sticks in 1968? Like, what
happened? The sticks in 1980s.
Oh, wow. I am so disappointed in you, California. I hope that has changed. It's got to.
It absolutely has changed.
I'm certain that has changed.
Those classes don't even exist.
Well, and I think that's
they're specialized education now.
I really do think that, we can't get into education policy, and I don't have any kids, so it doesn't.
Did you take home economics?
I'm trying to remember. I think I may have. I honestly don't remember.
I took home economics.
You took home economics.
I did, but
I certainly didn't take auto mechanics.
But I had the worst reason to do it.
Because all the girls were there? Oh, that's
ding,
terrible.
Ding, 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 ding.
So I'm still tripping
where the girls
on that.
were.
I'm still tripping that is okay. Bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring it back, Nilla. Come back to the topic. Come back to the topic. So I do think it would be really good to have those kinds of classes because, and maybe I didn't take home economics actually, because I remember as an adult having to learn how to cook.
Okay.
And having to learn how to effectively feed myself. And I got to tell you, when I first got out of the house, I didn't know how to feed myself. I would go get those lean cuisine meals, and I think I signed up for Nutrisystem or something. Now now you have those those meal boxes, and I'm not gonna say any particular one unless you sponsor us, in which case I will be happy to read you this this podcast to let you know. But and those are okay enough, and they give you the ability to actually learn how to cook and that kind of thing. But back in the day, I did not know how to feed myself. I didn't know how to cook a wide range of foods. I didn't understand how to eat. And so I would rely on Nutrisystem. I'd have one of their little Nutrisystem pizzas every day that was gross.
Right.
And then I'd have their pasta, little mini pastas that was also equally gross. And, try to figure out how to make them taste better. But we're getting off topic. In any case, what I would say is, if you have kids, do them a favor and enroll them in the analyzing, prioritizing, and execution of tasks, because it will help them as they get into their own household of learning how to care for themselves, how to do their own laundry, how to make a bed, how to sweep and mop floors. Because when I grew up, well, I guess you didn't have siblings, but I had siblings, and our tasks were very gendered. I was required to vacuum the house every single day, and I was the only one that did that, right? My brother, I think my older brother was required to take out the garbage and take care of the dog. But I mean, it was along these very gendered kind
Right.
of lines. And there were some tasks that I just never really learned how to do that I had to learn in my adulthood.
Okay.
So yeah, I am very much in favor of teaching all children how to manage all areas of household tasks, including maintenance, managing finances, shopping, cleaning, all the different tasks.
Yeah, and won't necessarily prevent kids from hating to have to do it, but at least they'll know how to do what they hate.
Yeah, they'll know how to do it. The other thing that I think is really important and can be helpful is that if you assign a task, rather than assign a time to do it, let people work in the way that works best for them, right? So as opposed to being like, this thing has to get done and it has to get done right now, unless it is pertinent to like, for example, the kitchen has to be clean so I can cook, right? It can be really detrimental to try to dictate when tasks happen, right?
Right.
So a good tip that I find is that if it's not yours, don't try to fix it.
Okay.
Right. That includes not telling people how and when to do it, as long as it gets done within what you have both agreed to be a reasonable time frame.
Right.
Right. So, dishes can't sit here for 2 weeks.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in our own personal, environment, like taking out the trash,
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to take out the trash. I don't mind that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And we both kind of have I don't think you ever really had to tell me to take out the trash. Because I think we both have a common viewpoint of when it needs to go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
And same with things like dishes and stuff like that. I think we have fallen into a space where outside of very specific tasks, we share most of the housework. Right. So we do the laundry together.
Right.
Sometimes I'll do it. Sometimes you'll do it. Sometimes we do it together.
Right.
We clean like kitchen and bathroom areas. Sometimes I'll do it. Sometimes you'll do it. Sometimes we do it together.
Right.
And then there are these specific areas that like it's primarily my area and it's primarily your area.
Right.
And occasionally the other person will do it.
Right.
So I think that works. And I think the research actually shows that rather than having, a task list and then dividing up the tasks, which it's not a bad way to do it, what most people find is that having an equal responsibility for most of the tasks so that it gets done, and then an agreement about the time frame tends to help.
Yeah.
Now, there are some special circumstances, and we fall within those special circumstances, right? I think, and we fell into those special circumstances a couple different ways. Circumstance might include disability.
Okay.
I don't know if y'all know this, but I had an injury a few weeks ago, and it made it difficult to actually sit and do some tasks.
Right.
Which might mean that, like, I don't know, the tasks tend to fall to the other person more than it would typically. Differences in time. And I think that has been a huge shift for us because at one point in time, we were first both working. Then we were both working and I was going to school. And then we were both working again, but working from home.
Right.
And then now I'm working and you are working on projects, but not necessarily expected to be in a particular place at a particular time.
Right.
So that has shifted how we do housework a lot because, time differences make a difference in how much we can actually contribute to the household.
Right.
The other thing are emotional or mental challenges, right? Things like learning disabilities. And here I'm speaking specifically about ADHD, emotional challenges like depression, which can have an impact on the amount of energy that I have to actually engage in self-care supportive tasks, including cleaning the environment.
Right.
And these are special circumstances that, one, you can find some really helpful tools that can help to support that. I'll tell you my favorite cleaning tip for ADHD. You ready? It's because for folks that don't know, attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, kind of known as ADD or ADHD, is actually it's a task switching problem. So imagine that everybody in their head has a receptionist and that receptionist says, all right, it's your turn to go back. Now it's your turn to go back. Now you two can go back together, right? And they set priorities for tasks.
Right.
for a lot of folks with ADD or ADHD, it's like everybody's coming into the party or the door's closed and ain't nobody getting in, right? But it can be very difficult to then switch between tasks, and it can be difficult to get started with tasks.
Right.
And that can make cleaning in particular really, really difficult, really challenging. So for the folks that I coach that deal with ADHD and want some assistance with cleaning, this is a not foolproof way, but a good way to help to do that. So it's a 5-step plan. The first step is to take a trash bag and walk around the space that you want to clean and just pick up all the trash. And to just continually go around the room, picking up trash, because you will start to recognize things as trash the more you go through the room, right? So I throw this away, I throw this away, I throw this away. I only focus on those things that need to be thrown away. That's it, right? Once that's done, put the bag down, put it by the door. Don't even take it out because maybe I'll get distracted by that, but just put it by the door.
Right.
The next thing I'm going to do is walk around and pick up all the dishes. I'm going to take all the dishes, plates, cups, forks, spoons, anything that needs to go back to the kitchen and literally just put it in the sink or the dishwasher, right? But then just gather all the dishes. Once that's done, I'm going to go around and I'm going to pick up all the laundry, any kind of clothing, any kind of cloth, any kind of towel, anything that needs to be washed in that way, put that into a laundry bag, set that down.
Right.
The next thing I'm going to do is walk around and put things back in their home. If they have a home, then I put it back in its home. So if that bag is sitting on the floor, then I go hang the bag, by the closet. If my shoes are in the middle of the room, then I go put my shoes wherever my shoes have a home, right? And then I walk around and put everything in its home. And then the only thing I'm now left with are things that don't have a home. Put those in a pile and deal with those when you have a chance to deal with those, right? So then you have a primarily clean and uncluttered space.
Right.
And we don't get the distraction of like, oh my God, I don't know where this goes. I have to now go create a place for this to go. And now I'm off to the races in a space of distraction.
Yeah, see, I get hung up on step 4.
What's step 4?
Which is the
things that have a home?
Things that have a home, put in a home. Mm-hmm. Because anything I pick up and take someplace puts me in a new place. Mm-hmm. And then I see what's in that place. And then that takes me to another place.
Well, and that's why you put it in its home and then go back and put something else in its home and go back and put something else in its home.
Yeah. I have a hard part remembering the go back part.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I had to spend some time, some personal development on working on that. Mm-hmm. Those are great tips. Those are absolutely wonderful.
Good. Yeah.
Any wrap up on any like lasting tips, or not tips, but
Yeah, I think the last thing is to just make sure that you communicate and that you have a plan to communicate on a regular basis. Like this is not the kind of thing that we set once and it's just set, because like we said, life changes, people change, where we are change, our times change. So I recommend that folks, if they are working to rebuild this area of their relationship, they spend maybe every couple of weeks actually talking about it, making sure we're on the same page, following up about it, sharing those things that are like, hey, next time you do the blah, 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 could you do it this way? As opposed to like when you do the task being like, oh, you did that wrong. You know what I mean? So that you have a chance to actually communicate what is important to you. And also to, be sure to think about those things that are not important to you, right? If it's not important to you, we don't have to run through everything, right?
Right.
And that may change again, depending on our circumstances. So the last key is, I think, always the first key, which is communicate. Yeah.
All right. Next, do you want to do a letter from a listener or a question from a listener?
Let's do a letter from a listener. I think this is the first time we are having this segment, so I'm super excited to hear the letter from a listener. And thanks, guys, for sending your letters. It is amazing to read and to just hear a little bit about what's going on in your lives. So thank you. And hey, what's the letter?
So, dear Rainbow Dreamcatcher, my man and I dated when we were 16, 17 for about a month and found one another again at the end of 40. He just turned 50, and I will be in November. We have really been truly involved in one another, healing from past relationships, and I think we have really grown to now understand the other side. I feel we have deeply connected, and we don't take each other for granted. I love that you two have this.
Aww.
I fell in love with him when I was 16, always looked for him, kept in contact with his sister, and finally was able to connect with him through Facebook after he had separated. We both were actually not looking for anything more than having a friendship. We were both accepting facts of our past and discussing that friendship was best, but we just kept talking and really then realized that we were meant for this huge jump from being friends to being partners in life. We have been through a lot already in the last 7 months, and both have decided we don't want to be anywhere else nor with anyone else. There's too much we both understand of one another that we already know that this is where we should be and stay. It's what we want in life together till we are no longer in their world physically. I love talking about his and my story. We also have the same last name, LOL, but no, we are not related.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
Yeah. Signed
I love
Leslie.
that. Yeah, we should maybe, we've heard this. First of all, Leslie, thank you for sharing that story.
Absolutely.
And I love these stories. That actually happened not to me, but in my family, where one of my family members met someone in high school, fell in love with them in high school, married someone else, had children with someone else, and then later in life reconnected with that person, and they have been married now for I think several decades.
Right.
And
that also happened to some really good friends of ours.
Happened to some really good friends of ours.
Shout out to Magda and Jack.
Who we
met on our honeymoon cruise.
And it was actually their honeymoon cruise too. And it was such a magical experience to experience that with them.
Yeah, and they shared their story that they had met when they were younger, got together, it didn't work out. They went on, had separate lives, reconnected at an older age.
Yeah.
Got together and are married now and loving life. So shout out to them as well.
Yeah. I think what I love about this story, and also what I take from this story, is not only is it possible to find love later in life, but it's also possible as a young person to really make good choices about relationships. Right. And I would probably tell you that even the choice not to be in a relationship with that person was probably a good choice
at that time. Yeah.
At that time. But that I think it's okay to say we can trust young people to make these kinds of choices for themselves and to really understand who they are and what they want and what's good for them.
Right.
And I think it's a wonderful example, particularly when we see those folks either come together at a young age and stay together through life, or those folks that come together at a young age and then reconnect later, having, gone through different kinds of growing experiences that they maybe needed to get to that place where they can now connect with the person that is the person they'll walk to the end of their life with.
Yes.
I love that.
Okay, so now we get to the question for the listener.
What's the question for today?
This question comes in from our dear friend Kimberly D.
Oh, yay. Hey, Kimmy.
And her question is, how do you get your partner to communicate expectations better?
Ooh, so a couple parts of that question.
I love the how.
Well, I love the how do I get my partner to, right? It's like, how do I get another person to do a thing?
Yeah.
Well, the first answer is I don't get another person to do another thing, right? And that's a really difficult place because communication has to be two ways. And we have this idea that if I do a particular thing, it will help my partner to do a completely other thing.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, unfortunately, it is really difficult to get another person to do a specific behavior. Right. So what I would first say is if I want my partner, if I want my person to do something different, the first thing I have to do is understand how to communicate that to them, as opposed to how to get them to communicate something to me. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And part of that is starting to figure out how to have difficult conversations. And I tell you that one of the ways that I've learned to have difficult conversations is to map out some important parts of the conversation. It's a harder way to actually think about it, but it also gives me responsibility for what's true for me without putting my expectations on another person. So let me tell you how I do that.
Okay.
The first thing is when I sit down to have a difficult conversation, I would look at what do I want to get out of this conversation? What's the actual goal?
Right.
Right. Because if I don't know what I want from the conversation, it's just going to meander in various different ways, right? So do I want like a behavior to change? Do I want to be heard about something? Do I want something to be reduced or added? I mean, whatever the purpose of the conversation is, I want to learn first for me, what is my purpose in having this conversation? Then I'm going to outline what I see to be the facts of the conversation. And this is the facts without any kind of like emotional engagement around it. That is like, this happened on Thursday, September 5th at 6 p.m., if that is possible. Right? But I want to stick to as many of the facts. And again, this is just in talking to me, not necessarily in talking to the other person, so that I have a clear understanding of what actually happened versus how I feel about what happened. Right? So I go through what actually happened. Then I go through my feelings about that, all the different ways that I feel about what happened. And once I do that, I look at what feelings would be beneficial to share and what feelings are beneficial to keep to myself. Right? Because not all of my feelings are necessarily going to be pertinent or helpful to my purpose. Right? Which is why we start with the purpose. Right? So some feelings are going to be helpful to share. Some feelings are going to be unhelpful to share. Right? Then I shift it. Well, actually, and then I look at what it means to my identity. Like, is this something that, it feels personal to who I am as a person? Then I shift that. And I actually do that from an imaginary viewpoint of the other person. How does the other person see the same set of facts? Would they add something or shift something that would be different? What would their emotions likely be? I can't know what that is. Right? But how would they view this? You can kind of guess how they might view this. How is this important to their sense of personhood and identity? Right? And then what is it that I want as a result? Like, what is what would be an appropriate resolution to whatever this thing is? And that's a good way for, I think, partners or really anybody to sit down and map out difficult conversations, which is, I need you to communicate your expectations better, is a difficult conversation, right? But in that way, I find it's helpful to figure out not how to get the person to do it, but how to make a request of that person in a clear and concise way.
They shouldn't email a survey over to the partner.
No.
And include that question within the survey.
Have I done that to you?
No, never. No.
Because I don't know. That maybe sounds like me.
Read these questions.
Please read these questions.
And just send them back. Answer thoughtfully. There's no yes or no questions. They're all the questions that need some thought. So, and then provide that within the next 3 business days.
Yeah.
No, probably not that.
No. Yeah, but I think, so in that sense, it's not about how I get another person to do another thing. It's about how I express myself to this person in a way that I can feel heard. Right. And then, then it's up to the partner to either hear you or not hear you. Unfortunately, we can't change behavior. Right. I can't force a change in behavior. I can only offer a shift in awareness.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, good. Well, Kimmy, thank you very much for that question.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. I appreciate it so much.
And listeners, we really definitely appreciate you guys tuning in and following the podcast. And be sure to, if you have questions yourself or you ask away, you can send us an email at rainbowdreamcatchertlp@gmail.com or hit us up on the social media. Mainly Instagram is probably the best place at Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love Pod.
You can also find us on Facebook. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you hear, YouTube, everywhere.
If you're listening to this, you've found a way to find us. But you can also reach out and be a part of the conversation as well. If you have a story about your own issues around household chores or, questions on, communicating expectations, or if you found love later in life with somebody that you dated back when you were younger.
Yeah, we'd love to hear
we'd love to hear those stories. So any of that, and whatever else you guys have. We appreciate hearing it. Reach out to us. We'd be happy. And then, of course, like, share, subscribe, all that things.
Yeah, please do all the things. And again, we are so grateful to our listeners. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, for walking with us as we are figuring out how to do this whole podcast thing, or at least I'm figuring out how to do this whole podcast thing.
Right. And if you're hearing this, yes, we mean you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Tell somebody, like I like to say, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your family's friends, and your friends' family. All right, y'all. In the meantime, we have been
Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love Podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.